Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park, and today we bring you Read 3 of Snow Globe by Soyoung Park. So within this book, we find out that Snow Globe is actually the place. And Snow Globe is this very specific utopian kind of place, and one of the things that they can control is weather. So the way they do weather is not to predict the weather, but to control the weather. So in that case, it had me thinking, what would your ideal temperature be? So like what is on any random day your ideal weather?
For me, my ideal weather is cloudy but bright.
What would be the degrees in Celsius or Fahrenheit?
It would be about 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius.
And for me, I think it would be closer to like the upper 60s. So 67, 68. And I would want sun, just not a lot and like a slight breeze. But then when we're thinking about like long term, would you have a certain breakdown of how many days you would want to be sunny, cloudy, rainy, and snowy?
I think snow and sun would be one day out of the year for me.
Oh, that's it?
Yes. Otherwise, I would like it to stay fairly cloudy and a little rainy.
Wow. I would kind of like about 50, maybe 40% sunny days. Maybe not
Hmm,
blistering sun, but just sunny. Cloudy, I would want at least maybe just only about like 10% of the days. Rainy's like another 10%, maybe 15%. And then I would want snowy days because I really like snowy days.
for sure. You like the extreme then. You
Yeah.
like the sunny and the cold.
I mean, I would say only having one day of sun is also considered an extreme.
For sure.
I don't think many people would prefer to only have one day of sun.
I mean, I think that's why I enjoy Portland weather so much, is because it's a lot of clouds and a lot of rainy days.
Yeah, but I think most people enjoy Portland's rain because it brings green, not because it actually rains.
I see.
But not everyone. Everyone's different.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of differences, let's talk about an organization that kind of brings us, who are people of different diversities and backgrounds, together, and that will be our recommendation for the week.
Our recommendation for the week is Asians in Advertising. Asians in Advertising is a nonprofit organization that fosters a vibrant community while empowering Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander individuals through unity, representation, and personal growth. Their mission is to develop community, create opportunities, and help elevate Asians to higher leadership positions, and they are dedicated to driving forward AANHPI equity in the workplace. You can learn more about their work through their website at asiansinadvertising.com and find them on Instagram at Asians in Advertising. That's ASIANSINADVERTISING.
Yep, and that's going to be our recommendation for the week. Okay, so third read of Snow Globe by Soyoung Park. What have we learned up till this point?
So far, we know that Chobahm as Haeri participates in Ibon's Christmas party, returns, quote unquote, to the go home, and attends the annual biathlon championship, all while trying to keep up appearances. However, a strange phone call reminds us that something's amiss.
Yep, so for this read, we've read pages 160 through 240 on the physical copy, and chapters 19 through 26, which was the second proposal through Banished. In this read, we kind of get a lot of the details to unravel and unfold as we're kind of learning about Chobam's life as Hetty.
Mm-hmm.
Chobahm is kind of starting to really integrate herself into this life. And one of the things that she gets dumped into pretty quickly is that role as the weathercaster.
Yes, and something that or I, kind of brought up in the previous episode is that it was interesting that Chobam as Heri struggles to do one-on-one interaction but seems to do well with public speaking. And that's kind of what we see with her role as the weathercaster. She lives for the spotlight.
Yeah, so she starts to shine, and her role as Hetty kind of becomes undistinguishable.
Mm-hmm.
And she does so well that Director Cha is fairly impressed by what she's being able to present.
Mm-hmm. And Director Cha even suggests that Chobam can stay as Heri forever, going against their original plan, which was to later have Chobam become a director.
Right. Within her role as the weathercaster, we don't see much change. We see her being able to do a later interview with Bonhue, but she's kind of well fixed into this position, and it
Hmm.
doesn't seem like that part will change. The issue is a lot more is happening behind the scene than we would have expected to happen.
Exactly. Like one thing that happens behind the scenes is that Chobahm as Haeri finds another portal.
Right. She once again is teleported through another mirror.
And this one is not in the Ebon mansion, but in the VIP dressing room in the news tower.
Right. And so during this journey where she's being transported and teleported, she is thrown into the same deserted place, but only to come across Bonhue while they're in this place together.
Yes, and they call it the off limits zone where no cameras are present.
Right. And this is where we start to see a different relationship between Bonhue and Hedy. Because up till this point, what we've seen is this very seemingly cold personality come out of Bonhue that's been interacting with Hedy. But
Hmm.
as they're there together alone, it seems like they've had some form of a relationship this whole time.
Right, and it makes me wonder, was this a good friends type of relationship or a more than friends type of relationship? What do you think?
So this is something I was even thinking about prior to this read was the way that the interactions were kind of going where it was fairly awkward and very simulated. It seemed like there was a situation where it could have been two worlds colliding kind of love interest between Hedy and Banwe. So this situation and this scene where they're in this forbidden zone or off limits zone together makes me think that there probably will be something in terms of an actual relationship of a love interest kind of forming.
Totally, but do you think that's between Bonwe and Hari or Bonwe and Chobam?
I think Bonhue doesn't know that Hedy is a second person, or I think
Right.
Bonhue only knows Hedy as Hedy. So at this point, I think it's between Bonhue and Hedy, but
Mm,
I think it could be in the future between Bonhue and Choba.
totally. I can see that going on too. Especially when he leans into her on the rocking chair. I
Mhm.
felt like that wasn't friendly. I think that was friendly.
Right. And I think what happens is they form a strong enough relationship that they let each other know their secrets, at least between Hedy and Bonhue, because Bonhue knew that Hedy was planning to leave the following year.
Right.
So there must be something else going on, as well as Bonhue kind of having this anger against Director Cha that seemingly is confusing, but if it's his support of Hedy, it would make a lot of sense for everything that's happened that we know up till this point.
Totally.
And speaking of confusing, let's talk about this mysterious phone call and situations that's been happening between Chobahm and what we now know is the previous Hedy.
Right. Like we mentioned earlier, in the previous episode, there was a phone call that happened during the slate moment. And in this section, another slate moment happens where Chobam gets another phone call.
Right. And this time, the person who's making this call is revealed. The last call, the voice was told as raspy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you had said it didn't make sense that it might be Hedy, but it was a
Right.
possibility. So what we find out is that was actually Director Cha's sister.
Mm-hmm.
And this time around, we get a much more familiar voice to Chobam, which is the previous Hedy. And that person is telling Chobam to open up that box that was in that present from way back when.
Right. But the present from Christmas.
Right.
And when she puts in the code to open the lockbox, inside is a Polaroid of Hetty or someone we think is Hetty with what appears to be burn marks on her face.
And this person then coordinates and convinces Chobam to come and meet up with her and devises this whole strategy, which is seemingly a way to take over the Hedy role again.
Mm-hmm. And we know this because Chobam gets attacked by this previous Hetty.
Right. So Chobam finds herself being attacked by a needle in the neck, which has a tranquilizer attached to it. She gets knocked out for 3 days, and the place that she finds herself is in a basement in a seeming bird cage kind of structure
Mm-hmm.
that has a bed in the middle, and she's handcuffed to this cage.
And when Chobam wakes up, she finds herself not in Snow Globe, but in a place called the Retirees Village.
Right. And the person that's kind of feeding her all this information is another one of Director Cha's sisters.
Yes, Chahyang.
But Chaehyung seems to be included within this realm of confusion because Chaehyung even thinks that the person that she is holding as Haeri is the character that eventually ends up entrapping Chobahm in there, and that character's name is Pesherin.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see is Pesherin eventually end up taking the place of Haeri again, and our only assumption is that Pesherin was the previous Haeri prior to Chobahm coming onto the scene.
Right. So there's this double mix up.
Right. And we don't know why. We don't know what led to Setting initially having to even come into this dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
But what we know is there are currently multiple Hetties around. And this character that the universe or the world of Snow Globe thinks of as this individual is actually maybe multiple characters.
Right.
This is a good time to bring up the thought that Eugen originally had that she talked about with Hedy, is that in this world, the world of Snow Globe, there are three clones. When I first heard that, what I thought that Eugen meant was that there were just three doppelgangers, people that looked like each other, and it was just by luck or coincidence or by some random draw that you might have two other people like you in this world that look like you, that talk like you, that could pass off as someone that you are.
Right.
Do you think that's more of the case? Or do you think that this is much more of a scientific experiment of there are actually three people that were cloned early on and birthed as a unit, and so there are actually three actual clones going around in this universe of Snow Globe?
Wow, I think we're getting into very conspiracy theory territory at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think and I still believe the former is the truth, that there are just three random people who look and sound like each other and can pass off as each other. But because Snow Globe is a place of cameras and there is that moment in public schools where they do have to act, that's how they know where all these clones are.
Hmm.
So we have this moment of the three doppelgangers, but let's think about the three sisters, the Cha sisters. Something sinister is afoot here. Why is director Cha Sol pretending her sister Dr. Cha Som is unrelated to her in the book? And why is her other sister Cha Hyung living in the retirees village? What guesses do we have here?
I feel like Director Cha might be the overall big evil here.
Hmm.
And I think her other two sisters are the ones that are kind of fighting against her. I don't know if they're forming some kind of coup d'etat, but it does seem like the sisters are separated. Although I feel like Director Cha still has a relationship with them of some sort.
Right, like a very discordant relationship where the younger sisters are obliging what she's asking of them.
Right, right. Do you think that this relationship between the sisters is going to eventually come to a bigger role within this whole story?
I think so. I think we're going to find out a little more about why these sisters act the way they're acting around each other and what led them to this place.
Right. And speaking of leading them to this place, what we've seen so far through Chobam's eyes are different worlds that most of Snow Globe has yet to see nor experience. One of them is that off limits place that she keeps finding through the mirrors. And through that, she notices this discordance between what is being publicly announced and what she has seen.
Mm-hmm.
One of which is that prisoner with the heart tattoo under the eye, because he was supposed to have been executed on the 23rd of December, but Chobam ends up seeing him on the day of the Christmas party,
Mm-hmm.
which wouldn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same thought process as with Hedy, the fact that she supposedly had committed suicide, but now she is within the presence of Chobam and even taking over that role. Where do you think this fits in with everything that we're seeing in the story?
I think it fits in really well, especially what we talked about in the last episode, how Hetty's mother says, "Why can't you just die when you're dead?"
Right. So this almost zombie-esque reappearance of characters consistently because of what the government might be lying about definitely seems fishy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Another part that I noticed that I think might be of relevance later is this whole media scene. So when we're in the newsroom and Chobam is going through this process of understanding what it takes to be this weather person, she gets a tour, she gets the background and the briefing of everything that's going on. One particular thing that she gets a briefing on is the control room. because there's a master control room and then there's the news control room. The master control room controls everything at all times except for during the hours of 9 to 10 when the news is on, and that control room is going to supersede the powers of the master control room.
Mm-hmm.
So because during that hour, the master control room loses the authority to be able to do anything, I think that this might be the megaphone that Chobahm uses in the very end to kind of announce whether it's the freedom or the demolition or the uprising and resistance against, I would assume, the Ibon family. And this would be the source that she would have to use.
So you think the uprising will be against the Ibon family and not Director Cha?
Yeah, I think the Ibon family is much more fishy with all their secret mirrors, with the money that they have, and the amount of power that they have. I think Director Cha is a pawn within the whole scheme, but the true powers that are controlling, I believe, are the Ibon family.
For sure, for sure.
Do you have any other theories about what we might be reading next or what might come towards the end of the book?
My prediction is that the third Haeri is gonna come back. I think she's not really dead, like we said in the last episode. And the two Haeris, and this is just me speculating, I think that Chobahm and the original Haeri might find a way to join forces to get back at Serin.
So you think that there's a third Hetty within all this?
I think so.
So you think the person before Sedin is somewhere looming, and then we have that Hetty, we have Sedin, and now we have Chobahm.
Right.
I did not even think about that. I was only thinking about the two Hettys. But we won't really know until we go further into the read. And what does that read look like?
For those who are following in the physical copy, that's pages 241 through 313. And for everyone, that's chapter 27, A Substitute for the Substitute, through 34, The Lovely Girls Next Door.
Yep. And if you have any good theories or ideas on what's going to happen or what's going on, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And how can people share those thoughts?
You can email us at asianbookclubpod@gmail.com or join the conversation on Instagram at asianbookclubpod.
Yep, and we have our website, which is asianbookclubpod.com, which has our bookstore that has books that we've read in the past, books that we recommend, and books that we plan to read in the future.
And a great way to support us is to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast.
Otherwise, make sure to be happy, be healthy, and read a book.
Ingat!
Bye.
Bye.